If you are interested in small space gardening and homesteading, then stay tuned. This is for you. Hey everybody, welcome back to Velvet Roads Homestead. Thanks for joining me today. As always, don't forget to subscribe and to click that like button. It's really cool when you guys do that. Today I am going to start my spring seeds, and I am just going to kind of talk about what kind of plans I have for my garden space this year, and I'll throw in some clips of just what my garden looks like now and what I plan to do this year. Today I am going to be starting my seeds, so I'm just going to be chatting while I do that. I don't have any fancy things that I use. So what I'm using, I have popsicle sticks to label my seeds so that I don't get them confused. I have these really cool green individual things that I got from Bootstrap Farmer. And then I have one of these trays that I use to put all of those individual cups in. So, what are my plans for my homestead this year? I have quite a lot. I'm very ambitious this year. After taking last year to kind of like get my schedule in order, I have decided that this year I'm gonna actually get serious and do all the things that I wanna do. So to start out with, this year I will be growing a lot more of the foods that we actually eat. With the limited amount of space that I have, I want to make sure that I'm getting like the bang for my buck. I've got 24 square feet of 24 times 6 is, somebody help me out. Not that much. And then I have a few of the round sort of beds that adds just a few more square feet. And so this year, instead of taking up some of that precious space with vegetables that I know that we're not gonna like, or that maybe didn't do well last year, or trying new things, this year I'm gonna stick to the basics. So really excited. I will piece in a clip here of what I got, but I'm sure many of you have seen it. It is a square foot gardener layout type thing. I'll have to look up the name. And I've seen it for the last several years and I'm like, oh no, I'll just do it without buying the thing. And I try it and it's okay, but this year I really bit the bullet and I purchased it. It's like this small square foot outline that you push into your soil, and then there's different holes that you can put your seeds into depending on how far you need to space it, which crop it is. So I plan on utilizing that this year to make sure that I am getting the appropriate spacing for all of my vegetables. So number one thing though that I'm doing with my garden this year is making sure that I'm planting the things that we are actually eating. I wanna make sure that I'm utilizing my space well and that I'm not wasting any of my precious like soil to plant things that I'm not a huge fan of. The other thing that I am going to be doing this year is I will be focusing on trimming back my grapevine. Last year I did not prune it at all and it was just wild. And I've noticed the last 2 years that I haven't trimmed it back a whole lot, that it tends to get fungusy and has some issues. And so I think that's just from it being too not able to have the airflow that it needs. So this year I'm gonna focus on pruning it as it grows after I cut it back quite a bit before springtime. I also cut back my my other fruit trees, my apple tree last year quite heavily. So I will need to keep up on that as it starts growing because I'm trying to retrain it along my fence line. So I'm gonna focus on just really making sure that I'm pruning a little bit at a time this year instead of doing such a hard prune in the winter time, simply because I do want to retrain my plants. Whoever lived here before, just kind of let them grow wild, and they don't produce as much fruit as they could. And so that is a goal of mine, is to get the fruit trees to start producing, which means that I need to retrain them so that they have enough light and airflow for pollination and fruit production. The third thing that I'm gonna try and make sure to prioritize this year is my side yard. And I'll insert some clips here of what that side yard looks like. It has currently been used for like my dumping zone. I have, since we live in this city, I don't have like a huge burn pile. I don't have a huge compost. The compost I have is like one of those old garbage bins that I just put a little bit here and there in to help it break down. And so unless I take a huge dump run, I have a lot of like cuttings and stuff at the end of the season. And so instead of getting rid of them, I've just been kind of thinking, I just think that like if I put them over there for long enough, they'll start to break down and that soil will just be so wonderful. And that's just not the case. What's ended up happening is blackberries have really taken off over there and kind of started growing into like our house almost. Wherever the egress windows are in our basement, they like try to grow in there. They try to go into our neighbor's yard, and we are very close to our neighbors. So I hate knowing that our blackberry bushes are like just growing into their space. So this year I plan on utilizing that space for gardening. So that means I need to basically take out, unpile all of the stuff that I've cut and take it to a yard waste program, or take it to my in-laws and they can burn it or something. But I'm gonna make sure to clear all of that out and then actually till it up and start fresh. Put new compost in, cover it with some bark chips. So I've got a bunch of different options, but I definitely know that I want to utilize that space. So that's like one of my top priorities. I want to get that cleared out before I'm actually planting things, so that way when it's time to plant, I can utilize that space for my seeds. I can even make that like my potato fields, like have that whole little space right there. Another thing that I want to focus on this year is taking apart some of the beds that I have in my backyard around my fruit trees and along the fence line. Instead of having the plywood around to make the bed, I think I'm going to utilize brick or something, maybe just spread it out and kind of have it be its own free space, because right now it doesn't look very pretty. And what I like is when my space, because we have such a small space, I like to be able to have things functional but also aesthetically pleasing. And right now it's functional, but it's not aesthetically pleasing. Like people will ask me like, well, why did you do your garden in your front yard? And it's because I have children. I want them to be able to have a space in our town without going to the park where they can just run outside and be kids. And so I decided also, because it's a south-facing yard, my front yard would get more sun than my backyard. And so to me, it just was a no-brainer. Most people's front yards are just like, solid grass. Like, what is that good for? It doesn't really have a purpose. It's just there, So I just thought it would be a good way to utilize the space that we do have. Since we live on a small town lot, it's about 6,500 square feet. So my growing space isn't huge, but I'm trying to utilize all the space that I have. Is I would like to focus on cooking more outside. When we first built our covered patio area, I was out there almost every morning making the kids breakfast. It was awesome because then we could eat outside, we could hang out outside, and the first thing in the morning, even if it's not super sunny or hot, we can still have our nice, wonderful breakfast outside. So that's another one of my goals for this year in my homestead, is to eat outside more. So number one, I want to make sure to plant things that we actually eat. So I'll be planting my kitchen staples, the things that we go through really quickly that I end up having to buy more of because they didn't grow enough. So I'll be trying to up that. And then I want to make sure that I am utilizing the space that I already have. So that means planting more densely, making sure that the spacing of planting things is appropriate to the plant. And I want to make sure to use that side yard that we have, and even some of the backyard along the fence I could use to plant other things. I also want to focus on trimming and pruning my trees and my fruit producing things back consistently and effectively so that our fruit production is much more than it was last year. And then lastly, I think this year I would love to make sure to cook more outside. So those are my goals for my garden this year, and I know that they seem quite small, but they feel rather large to me. Thanks for joining me today on hearing just about what my plans are for this upcoming year, and I look forward to sharing all of that with you guys. So just make sure you keep joining in. Thanks.